Welcome back. All right, so another redraft for all you fine people on the internet. Today we're doing the 2004 draft, so we're back to a draft of 30 players, and yes, an Atlanta Thrashers magnet on the board. So the 2004 draft is known for having a pretty good Russian player. In fact, two pretty good Russian players, I guess. And I can't see any reason why that would change at the top. So Alex Ovechkin still goes number one. Correct. Number two, Evgeny Malkin. Between the two, it's simple. Ovechkin, arguably the best goal scorer in the history of the league, and I say arguably because there's a lot of arguments about it. Evgeny Malkin, a player who, if not for injury throughout his career, would have point totals that are absolutely ridiculous, right up there with Crosby. His points per game numbers have been excellent, and he's got a Conn Smythe to his name as well. So there is absolutely zero reason that I would even consider making a change in who went 1 and 2 in this draft. That being said, it's after that things changed pretty quickly. So, number 3 for the Chicago Blackhawks. Moving up from number 258. He's just too good right now. Pekka Rinne. Rinne, of course, retired a year ago. Excellent goaltender for the Nashville Predators. It would look wrong to see him in a Chicago jersey, sure. But to me, when I'm looking at this list, I'm like, yeah, he's the third best player in that draft. I don't know how close that is either. I think he's easily the third best player in the draft. Number 4, going to the Carolina Hurricanes. Up from number 63, where he was originally drafted, David Krejci. Krejci, of course, this year is coming back to the Boston Bruins. They're hoping that they will get the same player in Krejci that they had before he left and went home, played there a year. We'll see if that is in fact the case, but Krejci at number 4, I think that's a pretty good argument in favor of Krejci. Would be just, Stanley Cup, excellent numbers, really solid throughout his career, and I think he would have been popular in Carolina, but he's played his whole career with Boston. So that being said, at number 5, I have a problem. Blake Wheeler is clearly the guy who should go 5th overall. Now, Blake Wheeler, I'm going to put him here. Here was the thing with Wheeler. Blake Wheeler refused to play for the Coyotes. Drafted by the Coyotes and said, thanks, I'm good. And so Wheeler would not play for Arizona, ends up being traded out because he's not going to play in Arizona. And so, Wheeler left them behind the 8 ball. But when I look at this draft class, Wheeler is still, to me anyways, the number 5 best player available. So for Coyotes fans, I apologize. I'm not doing them any favors by giving them Blake Wheeler. But again, when I look at this list, I'm like, yeah, he still would have gone, I would think he would have gone 5th overall. Then at number 6, up from number 15. So here's the thing with Alexander Radulov, a player who currently is not a National Hockey League player, but was up until this past season. And he was originally drafted 15th overall by the Nashville Predators. He did not play his entire career in the National Hockey League. He had at least a season or two where he wasn't. And again, if we're looking at the overall talent, Radulov has that. I think the frustration I had with him in Dallas the last couple of years was inconsistency, right? But Radulov, in terms of straight up talent, he had that. And so, Radulov, I would still take number 6, but I would totally understand other people watching this and saying no. At 7, going to Florida, moving up from where he was taken at 20th by the New Jersey Devils, I take Travis Zajac. Zajac played a long time in the NHL, didn't retire that long ago, solid career, good player, and so I would take Zajac at number 7, which of course would upset New Jersey fans because Travis Zajac was there for his entire career, right? I don't think he ever went anywhere else. Pretty darn sure he never did. Number 8, going to Columbus. Now, he had a shortened career. He was originally drafted 97th overall. But honestly, while Johan Franzen had his career shortened by injury, really good player. And it's a shame that his career ended the way that it did, where he ends up on LTIR and he's just stuck there, right? He's never going to play again kind of thing. So to me, Franzen, just based on the skill level, I still have to have him in the top 10 because we're looking at the entire career when we do these videos. And so for me, Franzen slots in at number 8. At number 9, yeah, dropping from number 4, where he was originally drafted by Carolina, Anaheim Ducks draft, Andrew Ladd. Andrew Ladd just put on LTIR by the, or he was going to be put on the LTIR by the Coyotes, but they don't really need to worry about cap space. So Ladd, number 9 on this, and his contract ends up with him being sent to the minors for a while and this and that. But yeah, Ladd I still think would end up in the top 10. Very good at his peak years. A few lean years. The most recent years have been very lean for him from an NHL standpoint, but still, when you look at the body of work, I would have him at number 9. At number 10, moving up from number 26, Corey Schneider. So this is where it gets kind of tricky. So now I have Atlanta drafting Corey Schneider, which will make Canuck fans upset because, of course, we drafted Corey Schneider 26th. Now, Schneider, some very good years in Vancouver, and then some good years in New Jersey, and then it just all fell apart with injuries, right? So over the length of his career, he was not that premier goaltender for as long as any of us thought, right? Injuries just caught up with him, and so, I mean, he's been around the game for a long time, but I would put Schneider at number 10. If you want to argue Schneider as high as 7, I think you can, but for me, I would put Schneider at number 10. And it's too bad that his career ended up as it did. And it's also too bad that Vancouver hasn't brought him back for just a 1 year. Just put him in a Canucks jersey, throw him into Abbotsford a little bit. But I understand why they haven't. Yeah, so Schneider goes at number 10 to Atlanta. Number 11, still around. I'm going to have him drafted by the team he's currently playing for. Number 91 that year for Vancouver, Alexander Edler. So, decent draft for Vancouver. They get Schneider and Edler. My redraft, I mess all that up. Edler goes to the Kings. Number 11, good defenseman. At times in his career in Vancouver, I thought he was played too much. I didn't think he was really a standard number 1 defenseman, and yet he was being played like he was. So I thought he got overextended, and that caused him to make some mistakes that were, well, they were talked about in the stands in Vancouver games. And so, yeah, Edler at number 11 on my board here for the redraft. At number 12, this guy's still playing. So why not have Alex Goligoski drafted by Minnesota? Makes some sense, doesn't it? Goligoski was drafted originally at number 61. And so in this draft, he's drafted number 12, so that's a move up for him. Solid at points during his career, played a lot of games. I think he's on the verge of 1,000 games. So that's pretty good right there, right? Yeah, Goligoski, defenseman, still playing. And so, yeah, number 12 for him. Number 13. At 13, moving up from 29th, I have Buffalo draft Mike Green. Mike Green at his peak was fantastic offensively, and then it just sort of, I don't know, he sort of hit a wall there in his career, and then it just kind of petered out at the end of it, right? Not a great ending for his career, but in general, pretty good offensive defenseman, and so I'm going to have Mike Green go at 13 to Buffalo. If he was able to play a little bit longer at that peak, he probably would have gone as high as maybe 6th, right, in this draft. Because from 6th to 13th so far, I would say these guys, you can make an argument for almost any of them at 6, all the way through to 13. At 14th, I'm going to go with another goaltender, this time to Edmonton. And you know what? This is where he was originally drafted, and that's where he's going to stay. Devan Dubnyk. Now, what's interesting with Dubnyk is that his time in Edmonton, there were some good and bad moments there. It felt like his career got better after he left. He bounced around a little bit after he left Edmonton, and then he found his peak with Minnesota, and he was pretty good. So, Dubnyk, I'm going to have go at 14 in the redraft. He was 14 originally as well. So, Dubnyk is still an Oiler in my redraft. Number 15, staying with goaltenders. this is not going to make up to Nashville fans for losing Pekka Rinne. But number 206 that year was Anton Khudobin. This was a pretty good draft for goaltenders. Now, Khudobin has had an up-and-down career. There have been times where he looks pretty good. He's been a backup for a majority of the time he's been in the National Hockey League. He's also a goaltender who's played time in the AHL. And the peaks and valleys in his career have been remarkable. So once his career is done, it's going to make a fascinating career video. Because really, he has been back and forth where at times people are like, oh, Khudobin sucks, and I can't wait till my team gets rid of him. And other times it's like, Khudobin is fantastic, we love him. And sometimes that can happen within a couple months or within a couple weeks of each other. So yeah, Khudobin will be an interesting career video. And so I'm taking him at 15th. At 16th, moving up from number 127th overall, Ryan Callahan. So another career that I believe ended in injury. But yeah, Callahan, good, solid two-way forward. Had a solid career. And yeah, so we're into those good two-way forwards now. And while we're at it, from number 60 and going at 16th in this redraft, Brandon Dubinsky, who had a similar career to Callahan's. So Callahan, Dubinsky going 16 and 17 respectively as we just get past that halfway mark of the first round. And this is a solid draft when it comes to the workhorses, right? The guys who can maybe lead your team, guys who can play at both ends of the rink. So Callahan, Dubinsky to me, very similar throughout their careers. Then we get to number 18, moving up from number 262. And he also played in Montreal during his career, and that's Mark Streit. Mark Streit, or Street, however you want to pronounce it. I know Streit's right, but people can say Street. It's not really, it doesn't bother me. It might bother other people. It doesn't really bother me. But yeah, so Montreal drafting him at 18th, and again, he was originally taken 262nd. So this was a draft with some steals late in it, and so Montreal ends up picking him at 18th. At 19th, to the New York Rangers, guy who's still playing, Blake Como. Blake Como, originally drafted 47th overall, good third liner, has, I believe at times, been a second line player. But yeah, Como at 19th, I think a pretty good pickup for the New York Rangers. And again, solid veteran players who played a lot of games. There's a lot of that in this draft. Speaking of which, moving on to number 20, moving up from 134th overall, Chris Versteeg. So not a lot thought of Chris Versteeg, and then he goes to Chicago. Things worked out pretty well for him there. And so Versteeg comes in at 20th for the New Jersey Devils. So again, you've got your stars here. You've got your minor stars, I would say 3 through 6. And then from there, you've got a lot of workhorse players and guys who were pretty popular with fan bases when they were there, that type. At 21, dropping from 13th, when Drew Stafford found his way out of the league, I was trying to get him another job. And I say that as just a YouTuber saying, I like Drew Stafford. I wish somebody give him a tryout, and it just didn't happen. So apologies to Drew. I tried. But yeah, Stafford, I thought, solid through his career. Bounced around the league a bit, as some guys are known to do. But yeah, pretty good forward. And when you're picked up by other teams, it means other teams want you. That's something that Sillinger said. He didn't think of it as teams not wanting him, as he thought of it as other teams wanting him, so he gets traded as a result. Number 22, originally drafted 94th overall that year, Thomas Greiss. So again, another goaltender. This was a draft that definitely had some good goaltenders, and hey, he's still in the NHL. So Greiss, while not spectacular through most of his career, and he's had some rough years along the way too, he's still in the National Hockey League. So you might want to argue Greiss as high as, say, 15th. I'm going to put Greiss 22nd. Again, you guys can let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. But yeah, Greiss at 22nd. I think that's fair, but you guys can let me know your thoughts. At number 23, moving up from number 150, Mikhail Grabovski. Grabovski, who ended up on a contract that was expensive and ended up on LTIR as well, but had some good years in there. I believe he had a couple 20-goal seasons, whatnot. And again, you know, just solid middle six forward, as we have a lot of those players on the board. Your superstars are going to be over here. And then we get into some guys where I'm trying to figure out who would be the last ones on the board. So yeah, Grabovski I'm going to have at 23. At 24, a player who just retired this summer. Just retired. Don't misspell the name. Andrej Sekera. Sekera, not a spectacular player, right? And not a player that was top 2 on the blue line or anything, but at times top 4, sure. Top 6, absolutely. And I thought he played well enough with Dallas towards the end of his career, but again, if we're looking at peaks and valleys and everything, I would think the peaks with him are a little lower than some of the players I put on this board ahead of him, but you guys can let me know your thoughts, as always. Which means we're moving to number 25. Carl Soderberg. Carl Soderberg was originally drafted 49th overall that year. I'm going to have the Oilers take him at 25. Soderberg, as I remember, good on faceoffs, right? Soderberg, decent enough third line option times during his career. I'm not sure if he had a lot of time in the top 6. I don't remember that he did, but solid third line either way. So yeah, number 26. As we're down to the last ones here, and I'm just trying to figure out. Okay. Troy Brouwer. Originally drafted 214th that year. I'm going to have Troy Brouwer taken at 26th by the Vancouver Canucks. I like Brouwer quite a bit, and I remember when there was some debate about him when he was free agent. I wanted him in Vancouver. He didn't sign in Vancouver. And I still think that would have been a good fit. A good playoff performer as well. Came up big in some key games over his career. And so, yeah, I mean, again, you got your middle six forward and a guy you can, as I said, step up and maybe get a goal in a big game. So Washington had 3 draft picks. So what I did with this board, your Screaming Eagle, the old logo here, and then the current secondary logo here, because sure, why not? We can do 3 different logos. So who does Washington take with this logo? Well, at 27th, I'm going to take, originally drafted 23rd. Can't spell apparently, and it's the same first name, and it's the same first name that's throwing me off. It's just like when I write Vanacek on the board, I keep trying to write Vance. My buddy, like, oh, Vance, it has to be a C before the E, and I'm like, nope, that's not right. So Andre, for some reason, that name throws me off because it's got the J in there. I'm not sure why that throws me off. But Andre Mazaros, originally drafted 23rd overall, he had some pretty good years in there too. Defenseman, offensively minded defenseman. Sometimes holes in the defense when you have the offensively minded defenseman. But yeah, Mazaros at 27th, I think, is a decent enough spot for him. At 28th, I haven't actually crossed off Ovechkin. I could always just say, you know what, I haven't picked Ovechkin yet. I have, though. 28th. Yeah, it's the J that apparently throws me off. I don't know what it is. First names don't have J's in them, and yet they do. Wojtek Wolski. And the nickname that a friend of mine at work and I used to have for him was Voltron. And I don't know why, we just thought it was funny that Voltron was the name. Again, and I wish I could say that was when I was in high school because of the way that nickname comes out. But no, in my 30s at the time that nickname came out. So right here, this guy. Yeah, Wojtek Wolski, good, solid, offensively minded player who sometimes was overrated in his career. But you could see it. You could see glimpses of how good he could be, which is why I think people really liked the player. And sadly, his career didn't end up being as long as we thought when he started out. So that brings us to 29th on the board. Moving up from 265th overall. Daniel Winnick. So now we're into a guy who's maybe third line, probably fourth line mostly throughout his career, and played a bunch in the NHL. Daniel Winnick played down the middle, didn't he? Face-off guy. So he ends up at 29th, and who comes in at 30th? Up from number 180, going to the Tampa Bay Lightning, who had just won the Stanley Cup. Yeah, moving up from number 180. Roman Polak. Pollock, long career for him. Part of some controversial hit or two along the way. But Pollock, a decent enough option, and again, likely in your top 6, maybe your number 7. Not usually in the top 4, but solid career. Now, in terms of your tough guys from this draft class, Brandon Prust was in it. Patrick Kaleta, who had some controversial moments in his career. Boris Valabic, who only played 80 games in the NHL, but is memorable. And Pierre-Luc Letourneau-Leblond. So there's a nice long name for you, which reminds me of Jean-Jacques in Shoresy, but that's a whole other discussion. Just when I was writing that down, I was like, is that where they got the Jean-Jacques idea for the name from Pierre-Luc Letourneau-Leblond, who could win some fights. And so none of these guys end up in the first round, but they could win their share of fights. So there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.